Try to initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2. 1. Mark.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark, a.k.a. Derringer. Today is Sunday, June 9th, and you are listening to episode 212 of the Instant Action Podcast, your weekly source for planet-side news and information. As always, I'm brought to you by great listeners like you via the Support the Show tab on instantactionpodcast.com. So speaking about that Support the Show tab, I know I mentioned it a few shows ago that I had issues with Amazon, and I guess I'm not allowed to tell you guys to bookmark my Amazon link, and so they completely shut me out. I actually lost quite a bit as a result of it. However, I have got a new account all set up and going. So once again, my Amazon link is working. So please, if you've done so in the past, continue to use my Amazon link to purchase stuff through Amazon. Again, all you have to do is click my link, go to the website first, instantactionpodcast.com, hit the Support the Show tab, click on my Amazon link, and then do your shopping normally. And what'll happen is the cost will not increase for you or anything like that because I am driving you to Amazon. Amazon gives me a bounty, a small percentage of whatever the sale is that you're doing. The nice thing for me is that most electronics, like if somebody orders a giant monitor or something like that, I get a much larger cut of electronics and things like that. So definitely anybody purchasing electronics, by all means, use my Amazon link. But again, everybody just note that I have changed that. So you should be deleting your old bookmarks because those no longer work. And then, like I said, go through my website, click on through on the Support the Show tab and do your Amazon shopping. I need you guys to do that again for me. You were doing so good. And then, like I said, Amazon shut me down. So following the rules correctly this time. Other than that, I am back from California. I'm happily downstairs in my studio recording this week's show. I had to record last week's show in the guest bedroom that I was staying at in my brother-in-law's house. So if anything sounded off as a result, that's why. I did bring my microphone and I did it on my laptop, so I still was able to record a show, obviously, because it went out last week, and a lot of you downloaded it, so I appreciate that as well. But again, I am back home. I got to play PlanetSide 2 last night for a couple hours with B-Way, and oh God, I can't tell you, when you really want to play a game nonstop and then you go on vacation for 2 weeks and don't bring a PC capable of playing PlanetSide 2, it really hurts. So, I mean, somebody told me, just have Daybreak Games pay for a gaming laptop for you. That's the least that they could do. Yeah, Daybreak Games is not going to send me a gaming laptop so that I can play PlanetSide 2 while I'm on vacation. I'd have to purchase something like that myself. It's not out of the realm of possibility, I guess, because, like I said, 2 weeks was it was a long time. I'm going away for another week sometime in July. Hopefully, I won't feel I won't miss PlanetSide 2 as much during that week. But who knows? I'm sure I will. Like I said, 2 weeks, long time to be without playing a game that you want to play. But like I said, I'm back. So what's in store for this week's show? Well, first I want to cover the June 6th PC game update, which has some heavily requested fixes. Then I'm going to delve into REL's Apology Reddit post, followed by the June 7th PTS update. After that, I want to point everyone to a survey that you should take, and then I'm going to finish with an email about Maxes. So strap in as we hot drop into another episode of the Instant Action Podcast. So first up this week, like I said, June 6th, we had a PC game update, and the majority of this update was miscellaneous changes, fixes, and additions. So, I mean, I know they call it an update, but this is more a hot fix than anything else. And it was really to kind of fix some of the glaring issues that have been out there with the DirectX 11 update. And I know this doesn't fix everything that's going on in game. They know that there are still some issues out there. And I was seeing on the forums that and on Reddit that a lot of people had issues with this game update. You know, they were crashing to desktop after they got killed. That was a hilarious one that a lot of people were getting, as well as other various instability with this game update that is fixed now, because like I said, I played the game without issue for a few hours last night. But going through those miscellaneous changes and additions, first off, any player using Join Combat to travel to a new continent is now going to spawn in the warp gate instead of being dropped from orbit without a drop pod. The devs are hoping to resolve the issues with characters not being mounted correctly, but this is going to be a solution in the meantime while they work on that. Also, the next change, and I think this is probably the biggest one, is that cloaked players and objects are now visible on low and very low settings. And they had a client-only update with a separate tuning pass on those visuals, which pushed out at one point. This was, I think, probably the biggest complaint with the DirectX 11 update, is that if you were using potato settings or low settings, like I mean, my computer can handle better than low settings, but everyone I know who streams or plays the game competitively, and I talk to a lot of them, like Gelos and stuff like that, saying, you know, what level do you use? And they're all like low settings, and there's no reason I wouldn't use low settings to get as much FPS out of the game as possible. So I use low settings almost exclusively, and I definitely had this issue with cloaked players and sunderers. You couldn't see them. All of a sudden, a infiltrator would pop out of nowhere and start knifing you, or you'd get stuck trying to run around a sunderer that you couldn't see, things like that. So I will say, me personally am very happy that this change was dropped on us on June 6th. And I can definitely say it was not super easy, but easier to see cloaked players now on the live game. So if you were holding off on playing because you couldn't play on low settings, that's been fixed. Next, they fixed the 3D HUD icons so that they now snap to the correct side of the screen. I guess this was mostly noticeable when trying to track aircraft that were behind you. They also fixed an issue where continents were getting stuck in a state with disabled regions indefinitely, and I know I ran into that a few times and saw people complaining about that. They also properly refunded the spawn beacon certification line. Apparently that didn't make it into the last update. I can tell you that I logged in last night and I immediately got the pop-up saying my spawn beacon had been refunded. Now, an issue that a lot of people are having when they log in and get that message is that they then do not have a spawn beacon to place. So the fix for that is just to log out and then log back in. If you're on a full continent, I guess the trick for that is to Alt F4 and then start the game up again, and you'll be able to get back on the continent that you were on, and that happened to me. I was on the continent we were all fighting and realized I couldn't place a beacon, so I Alt F4'd out, ran the game again, and then was able to place beacons from then on in. So that's your fix if they're still having that issue. Next, they fixed the population pie chart so that it no longer shows a purple sliver when NC and TR are fighting with a 40-60 population split. I know, big whoop. But I guess people were getting confused thinking that VS was also fighting at these bases. NSO characters should no longer see the string cert point beneath the daily members cert login reward notification. In fact, on my screen, that's all I was seeing. So good to see that that is fixed. They fixed an issue where players couldn't respawn in the tutorial zone until about halfway through completion. They fixed the NC Max's Aegis shield so it now blocks explosives. They fixed and updated the shader visuals for the Aegis shield, also for the engineer mana turrets. and the vehicle gate shield generator's overload mechanic. And I will say that these shaders were noticeable because someone mentioned last night that engineer mana turrets look different, and I realized it's because of these shader visuals. They also fixed it so the unstable warp gates icon persists on the map header through all levels of the unstable warp gates instead of just the first level. And finally, the character select window should now scale models better at various resolutions. So they don't look super skinny like as someone posted last week. That has been fixed as well. Next, there were some changes to the spawn system itself. The spawn point at Anvari Biolab no longer appears in the middle of the map. They fixed an issue where spawn options would sometimes break at the ascent. And also in an effort to reduce map clutter, spawn options will now unmask themselves as they get closer to being available. Players will still always see priority 1 and 2 on the map immediately. So that hasn't changed, but it's those other ones you can sort of see them unmask themselves. Also, they made changes to the Elysium spawn tube. The matrixed spawn option is now available as a priority 1 spawn at all times, which is a good thing. And then any Elysium spawn tube and router that you're not matrixed to are now on the priority 2 cooldown at all times. And again, that's the Elysium spawn tomb that you're in matrix to, not the router, because you can't matrix yourself to a router. And then finally, the spawn beacon cooldown is remaining on a priority 2 cooldown when it was the last spawn point used, instead of providing a near instant cooldown for subsequent respawn. So I'm happy with this change. I'm okay with this change. I like the near instant cooldown for spawn beacons, but I do think that there should be a little bit more of a cooldown after you spawn on a beacon so you can't immediately spawn again. So there's your spawn system changes. Next, the maximum population limit of 96 for a direct spawn to a combat region was replaced. This was a big bone of contention of everybody this past week, and something I talked about on last week's show. They've changed it so it's now a per faction spawn limit of 60. So that means you're going to get a total of 180 in a combat region at any given time, rather than just a flat 96. And the dev notes on this one is that it also allows defenders to more easily contest overwhelming enemy numbers, and it should also increase the overall size of a battle before convenient spawn options are disabled. Also, they re-enabled reinforcements needed. Now, they did note that though the changes to the system still need to be made, they've re-enabled it because it has been more beneficial than detrimental to players. And a lot of people complained about it during its absence since the last update. And I saw a lot of people complaining about that. Also, cutoff regions now only disable defender hard spawns in that region, and remaining spawns are placed on a priority tool cooldown time. Spawning into a cutoff region from afar can now only be done via squad tools. And the note on this one is that previously attackers couldn't maintain an attack on a cutoff region, as it was most spawns to that region for both sides. This change should help fights in those areas more naturally draw to a close. And then finally in this game update, vehicle capture points got a little bit of a change. All single point bases now change control more quickly. Instead of capturing anywhere from 2 to 4 minutes, they've been standardized to 1 minute. Again, this is for single point vehicle capturable bases. And then finally, vehicle capturable regions now show a new outpost icon on the map screen itself. So again, there is the entire June 6th PC game update. Not a huge one. And again, I feel like it was more a hot fix than anything else. But with that, let's move on to our second topic this week, where we got an apology from REL. So, like I said, REL actually posted an apology on Reddit, and he titled the apology itself. Where is it here? Hey, so we messed up. And I'm going to read this word for word what he wrote because I don't want to try to summarize it outside of what his words are. So he wrote, last update was a bit of a mess. There was a lot of positivity surrounding the fixes going into the most recent update, and some of these fell flat. We didn't have our pass complete for info cloak on low. How it currently looks is not how it'll look when we're finished, and the per faction population limit check was broken. Reinforcements needed was already broken, but to varying degrees based on where it was trying to spawn you. Good news is that we've got a workaround for reinforcements needed that is on live currently, and a PTS update to fix some issues with the spawn system. He then goes on to say that next week we'll be getting this to live, and ideally with an updated cloak shader for the low pipeline, provided no more issues pop up while it soaks over the weekend. He then goes on to say, thanks for trying to be patient through this. The spawn system is fundamental, and it's important that we get it right, which unfortunately means a lot of tuning. If we didn't feel like this system had the potential to alleviate a lot of problems, we wouldn't have done the work on it. Taking the L isn't the direction we're going, and hopefully the coming update will get us to a place of relative stability. Not to say that more tuning won't take place, but as a lot of enthusiasm showed in the previous patch note post, getting the per faction pop balance working is one of the last remaining hurdles. Yes, we should be using test server more often. No, test server is not ideal for many cases, spawn system testing included, but it would have brought to light the UI memory issue we faced earlier this week. We've got a bad habit of trying to turn updates out very quickly, sometimes overlooking crucial elements we're then scrambling to fix later. Part of that is being a small team. Part of it is an overwhelming eagerness to grow the game, and the two often clash with one another. We'll try to temper our strategy in the future. So again, I just wanted to make sure I read that word for word because I think it's important that you hear exactly what he writes and how he wrote it and stuff like that, because I appreciated them coming on. And again, understand that my appreciation comes from the fact that I didn't get to play last week, and I didn't get to experience any of the reinforcements needed broken stuff, any of the UI memory issues, or the crashing to desktop when you're dying and things like that. I still appreciate when a developer like REL is willing to come to the table on the platform that the majority of PlanetSide 2 players get their news from, and say that he's sorry and the team is sorry for how everything went this past week. This hand in hand with their dev live streams is one of the reasons that I love this dev team. They're willing to pop into Reddit, respond to people's posts, throw something like this out there for everybody to read saying, hey, you know, we fucked up and this is what we're doing to fix it. We understand what we've done here. We're not going to, quote unquote, take the L, which I think is the correct thing to do. Why would you take a loss and get rid of the spawn system itself? I mean, personally, just spitballing on this, I don't think the current spawn system is that terrible. You know, the changed spawn system is not terrible at all. And I think once these additional bugs are, you know, tweaked and fixes go through, everything's going to be fine. You know, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt to try to push this stuff out into a proper, final, fixed way. There's no reason at this point to get the pitchforks and go after them for something like this. And I also wanted to go further into this post because Paul also commented on this post, and he wrote, just wanted to chime in briefly on this. A lot of what game development is about is finding a balance between speed and accuracy. Go too fast and you miss your target. Take too long and the target is moved. In this case, we lined up our shot a little too quickly and have opted to take our time to aim the next one. For those who are curious, in this metaphor, the spawn system is a loud, powerful rifle that was highly customized by several people, some of whom may or may not have ever existed. It appears to be made of a strange metal that smells like paper. It uses a series of buttons, cranks, and triggers to fire, and for ammunition, it uses those weird watch batteries and four-sided dice that somehow keep pouring from a nearby hose. So, just to give you, he just puts it eloquently enough to explain. The biggest thing is that they went too fast pushing the last game update out and realized their mistakes with it, and therefore they're taking their time on the next one. Now, using that metaphor of that rifle, I agree with what other people wrote. That should definitely be an NSO weapon in the game at one point. I do want to see watch batteries and four-sided dice coming out of something in PlanetSide 2. Anything you guys can do to make that happen. So again, this was an apology from the devs. You guys should be thankful that the devs are willing to come out here and give some sort of apology like this, and understand that they might have made a mistake pushing something out too quickly and missed something, and will be using the PTS more and stuff like that to gather stuff like this. You guys should be thankful you have a dev like this, and not some asshole dev who's not willing to understand that they might have made a mistake on something and won't admit will feel that they're infallible within the game itself. So again, that's one reason that I like the dev team that we have now and things like that. Now, there was a PTS update as well, and I'm going to talk about that next. And that PTS update dropped on June 7th. It's just the bug fixes that REL mentioned in his apology, also saying that this is something they're pushing out to test. They did it on the 7th. Like I said, that was Friday. And they want them to percolate over the weekend to see if anybody has any issues with them. So there's 4 of them. The first one is that clicking the reinforces needed spawn location will no longer prevent the player from deploying to that area. Next, spawning into balanced fights at contested regions with less than 60 allied population should now work. Next, Elysium spawn tubes greater than 1,000 meters from the player are now on a 30-second spawn cooldown opposed to a 20-second cooldown. And finally, warp gate spawn locations for all unlocked continents should now appear at all times. That's it. Just 4 little simple things. And that goes hand in hand with the apology saying, we're going to go a little slower on pushing these things out. Here's 4 simple corrections that need to be made to the game without trying to dump a whole bunch of stuff in there all at once. So that's the entire update altogether. That's out on the PTS right now. Hopefully you guys had a chance to go and check these quick things out to make sure they're working, so the devs had some data to work with over the weekend. But with that, let's move on to this week's 4th and final topic. And that topic is a data collection survey that I took, I think, before I went on vacation. But it's still up and running, and I wanted to, kind of bring this to everybody's attention. So a user named Skylarper put this together, and it's a really short survey for the most part, but it's just getting some data about PlanetSide 2, and I'm curious to see what he's going to do with this data once he's done with it. It asked, the expected questions like, what faction do you play the most, and things like that. Do you play all factions, etc., etc. But it also asks some opinion-related questions, which I don't think a lot of people have asked in other surveys that were done. And that's why this one has actually come to my attention and is one that I'm asking my listeners to go out and take. I'll include a link to the Reddit post so you guys can actually check this out and respond to it. But like I said, it's got some opinion-related questions like which weapon has the highest average rate of fire? Which weapon has the highest average damage per shot? Which faction do you think has the highest damage per shot? Which faction do you think has the highest fire rate? And I mean, these are all answerable static questions if you dig for the information, but I think Skylarper's going for some thoughts on what the community thinks these are. And I'm curious to see if he's going to try to push some OP agenda on this, or maybe not agenda is the wrong word, but I'm curious if he's going to try to see if it's able to spin the information that way, saying a lot of people think this, but the actuality is this, and then maybe we can do some analysis on why we think that is the case. But again, it's worth a few minutes of your time just to go and take the survey, and I am eagerly awaiting the results of this. But with that, let's move on to housekeeping this week.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Come back later, please.
Housekeeping.
Not now.
Housekeeping.
Go away.
I coming anyway?
So I did get one email this week, and it was from Matt9, and he wrote, "It was great to hear your discussion about your tour of the DB Games studio. I think that PS2 has some great time still ahead of it. Thanks for sharing." Just as an aside, Matt9, you're very welcome. I looking back on it, I was in California for 2 weeks. I did a ton of stuff while I was there. I did, let's see, everything that I did there. I did the Animal Park in San Diego. I did Balboa Park in San Diego. I did museums. I did Japanese gardens. And then I did the Daybreak Game Studio tour. I did a bunch of other stuff in San Diego, and then went up to San Jose. I took my wife to the Artichoke Festival. My wife loves artichokes, don't ask. So we went to Artichoke, the 60th annual Artichoke Festival out there, which was a good time. We went to San Francisco one day. We ate in Chinatown. We went over the Golden Gate Bridge. We went down to Carmel and did some hiking while we were out there. Again, I did a ton of stuff in California over these past 2 weeks. And I hate to say it, but my visit to Daybreak Games was probably the highlight of my 2 weeks that was there. And sure, that's probably sad. But that was the most exciting thing that I was looking forward to doing while we were there. So I had a great time. Even though I had a quick tour and just went to lunch with the guys and that was it, that was great for me, and it made me really happy. Matt9 goes on further saying, though, "So we are not 2+ months past the NC Max nerf. When last statistics showing the significant difference between NC and other faction max kills by weapon were discussed, the rebuttal to the data was that NC Max players hadn't learned how to play their adjusted maxes, and it was too soon to talk about the nerf effects. I'm curious if we are far enough after the nerf that NC Max players should have adjusted, and if you have seen any data detailing their use and comparison stats. Thanks for your continued work and keeping us all updated on Araxis." So Matt9, I do have a little bit more information, and maybe this is the information you're probably talking about because You a Madman puts together some stuff, and the last information that I got from him was basically 8.8 million kills in the game over 12 days, and he throws that into an elastic stack to generate various charts, and he was showing that the kills by faction, NC was 22%, TR was 40%, and VS was 37%. So they really haven't changed, even though, quote unquote, NC players should have learned to use their max by now. I do think still that the nerf has gone too far. And we need to see about doing another pass on the NC Max weapons. Because again, TR and VS Maxes are still much further and in much better places than the NC Max is currently. So hopefully that answers your question. But that's going to be it for this week's show. So as always, how can you get in touch with me or the show itself? Well, your first stop should be my website, www.instantactionpodcast.com. You can also email me like Matt9 did at instantactionshow@gmail.com. You can call me and leave me a voicemail at 347-4VM-4PS2, or that's 347-486-4772. And finally, you should follow the show on Twitter at InstActPodcast. But in closing, if you've enjoyed the show, please leave me a review on your podcast listening avenue of choice, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere else. Also, feel free to tell your friends and outfit mates about the show. But finally, thanks for listening, and keep spamming that join combat, formerly known as Instant Action button. Derringer out.
Oh my god, Derringer, please.